My parents treated me like an outsider, a stepdaughter in my own home. One day, while I was baking a cake, the kitchen was a mess. My mother stormed in, her face twisted with rage. "You idiot, look at what you've done to my kitchen," she yelled, slapping me across the face. Without hesitation, she grabbed the cake and smeared it all over my face. My father joined in, shouting, "You're wasting your time." They both kicked me out, their cruelty making it clear I was unwelcome. That day, I swore revenge. The next morning, the police were knocking on their door. I had never been the child they wanted. I knew from the moment I was born that I wasn't the son my father had hoped for. He had dreamed of a boy who would share his love of sports, someone to carry on his name. But when I arrived, he hid his disappointment, at least outwardly. It didn't take long for me to realize that I was never what they had expected. I wasn't their favorite. That honor went to Emily, my older sister. She was everything they wanted in a child: smart, successful, and on track for a promising career in finance. From an early age, Emily excelled in everything. She was the shining star of the family, while I was just a shadow. At every family gathering, or when we visited neighbors, it was always about her achievements. "Did you hear? Emily aced her math test again," or "She's been selected for an internship at the bank. She'll be making more than any of us." It was always Emily. And me? I was Sophie, the 1W. Ho couldn't measure up. The age gap between us didn't help. Emily was 3 years older, and it seemed like she always had a head start. No matter how hard I tried, I could never capture the attention she seemed to earn effortlessly. I started feeling invisible. As a little girl, I noticed that my accomplishments, good grades, trophies from school competitions, never seemed to matter. But Emily, she was praised for even the smallest things. As I grew older, I became more self-sufficient. I made my own lunch, did my laundry, and handled my homework without help. I realized that no one was going to care about my successes or failures. If I wanted something, I had to make it happen myself. It wasn't all bad, though. There was one thing that gave me a sense of purpose: baking. It all started when I was 12, at Aunt Lily's house. She was baking a cake, and I watched in awe. Aunt Lily was always kind to me, treating me like I mattered. She let me help her, teaching me how to make my first cake. For the first time in a long while, I felt important. From then on, I baked in secret, experimenting with new recipes whenever no one was around. I wasn't great at it, but I didn't care. It was the one thing I could do where I felt proud of myself. I could make something that tasted good, something people liked. For the first time, I felt like I had a talent. When I went to college, I decided to bake a cake for my parents. I wanted them to see me, really see me, and hoped that my effort would be enough to earn their attention. I spent hours in the kitchen, carefully following Aunt Lily's recipe. As I placed the cake on the dining table, my heart raced. But when my mom walked in, there was no excitement, no recognition. She barely glanced at the cake before her eyes darted to the mess I'd made in the kitchen. "What is all this?" she snapped. "Do you think you're in a restaurant, Sophie?" My stomach dropped. I had worked so hard for this moment, but I stayed silent. Mom stormed over to the cake, her face filled with fury. "You call this a cake?" she sneered, before lifting it off the table and rubbing the frosting into my face. "There's no place for this in our house. Focus on your studies. You're not a cook, Sophie. You'll never amount to anything in the kitchen." I was stunned. The sting of her slap still burned on my cheek as I stood there, my face now covered in frosting. My father, silent in the corner, looked at me with disappointment in his eyes. It felt like I had failed my one chance to earn their approval. In that moment, I understood, I would never earn it. "Leave," my father said coldly. "We don't need you here, making messes. Get out, Sophie. You're not welcome." Just like that, I was kicked out. For baking, it didn't make sense. Was it so wrong to have a passion for something? Was I really that worthless in their eyes? That night, I found myself in my car, tears streaming down my face, trying to make sense of it all. I didn't know where to turn, but then I remembered Aunt Lily. She was the one person who had always made me feel like I mattered. I dialed her number, and in between sobs, I told her everything. "Come stay with me," Aunt Lily said without hesitation. "You'll always have a place here. Don't worry about your parents. They don't know what they're missing." I left my childhood home and moved in with Aunt Lily. She gave me a sense of peace, a sense of belonging I had never known. Her support gave me the strength to keep going. My parents had made their choice, and now it was time for me to make mine. I couldn't rely on them. so I would rely on myself. With Aunt Lily's encouragement, I finished my business degree, but deep down, I knew my true passion was baking. I had no interest in the corporate world, but I kept pushing forward for her. If she was proud of me, then maybe I could stand tall. Slowly, I baked more and more, and eventually, I enrolled in a professional baking course, the first step toward building the life I'd always dreamed of. My parents never reached out, they didn't care about my dreams, but Aunt Lily did. She believed in me when no one else did, helping me find the courage to become who I truly was. It wasn't easy to take that first step, but I knew it was the right one. I was determined to follow my heart, no matter how much my parents hated it. Little did I know, the biggest challenge was still ahead. After moving in with Aunt Lily, things slowly started to settle. It wasn't a smooth ride, how could it be? I carried with me so many emotions, the sting of rejection from my parents, the anger, the feeling of failure. It weighed heavily on me, but Aunt Lily was my anchor. She never judged me, she simply supported me, encouraged me to keep moving forward. She didn't care about my parents' approval, she cared about me, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly seen. I continued with my business degree, though it was hard to focus on something that didn't ignite any passion in me. I pushed through because Aunt Lily was always so proud of me, always telling me how much she believed in my baking. "Sophie," she'd say with a smile, "you have a gift. You can take the simplest ingredients and turn them into something extraordinary." Her praise wasn't just words, it was real, and it meant the world to me. One day, after I'd completed my degree, I made a decision that would change everything. I enrolled in a professional baking course. It wasn't easy to share this with Aunt Lily, but I knew it was the right thing to do. "I'm doing it," I told her, my voice full of excitement and fear. "I'm going to make baking my career." Aunt Lily smiled widely, wrapped her arms around me, and said, "I knew you would, I've always known." Her belief in me gave me the strength I needed to take the plunge. The course was intense, but I loved every moment. I immersed myself in learning, from basic cakes to intricate pastries. Every day, I honed my craft, and when I finished the course, I felt confident I was ready to open my own bakery. I saved every penny I could, and with Aunt Lily's encouragement, I took the leap. I rented a small space in the heart of Chicago and opened my cake shop. I called it Sophie's Sweet Creations. It was mine, a little corner of the world where I could do what I loved and hopefully find success. In the beginning, business was slow. I didn't mind, I expected it. I knew that word of mouth would spread, and with every cake I baked, I was improving. Slowly, customers started to come. They returned not just for the cakes but for the personal touch I put into everything I made. My shop started to gain attention in the local community, and that kept me going. Despite my growing success, I couldn't bring myself to tell my parents. They hadn't contacted me since I left, and I feared their rejection. I didn't want them to tell me that I was wasting my time, that my dreams were foolish. But even with that fear, I couldn't help but feel proud of what I was building. Meanwhile, Emily's life seemed perfect. She had graduated from a prestigious finance school and landed a high-paying job at a bank. My parents couldn't stop talking about her. "Did you hear, Sophie? Emily got a promotion. She's going to manage her own department soon." Or, "Emily's already getting offers from other banks." They're all impressed with her. The praise for her echoed in my ears, a constant reminder that no matter what I did, I'd always be second place. But I had my bakery, my passion, and Aunt Lily's unwavering belief in me. That was enough. I worked tirelessly, baking cakes for weddings, birthdays, and corporate events. Business picked up faster than I expected. Local magazines even wrote about my shop, bringing in more customers. The media attention felt surreal. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was doing something that mattered. People were noticing, and I was finally getting the recognition I deserved, not from my parents, but from those who appreciated what I did. Then, one day, while wrapping up a cake order, I heard something on the news that made my stomach drop. Emily had been arrested for her involvement in a massive fraud scheme at the bank where she worked. I froze. Emily, the perfect one? My mind couldn't process it. I thought it must be a mistake, but as the details unfolded, the truth hit hard. Emily had been part of a team that embezzled millions of dollars. Her arrest was just the beginning of her downfall. I didn't know what to feel: shock, confusion, maybe even anger, but mostly, I felt nothing. It was hard to explain. I had always looked up to Emily, and now she was in the middle of a scandal that could ruin everything she had worked for. But I still couldn't bring myself to reach out to my parents. I hadn't spoken to them in so long, and part of me felt relief. Maybe this would be their wake-up call. Emily wasn't perfect. She wasn't the golden child they always made her out to be. But the story wasn't over. The worst was yet to come. The news of Emily's arrest shattered everything I had believed about my family. For years, I had lived under the crushing weight of their expectations, feeling like I could never measure up to Emily. But now, watching her downfall, it felt almost like a cruel form of justice. She had been the golden child, the one my parents adored, and yet, here she was, caught in a criminal scandal. I didn't know whether to feel sorry for her or just relieved. In some twisted way, I felt validated. She wasn't the flawless daughter my parents had made her out to be. Still, I wasn't sure I was ready to reach out to my parents. For years, I'd convinced myself I didn't need their approval. But now, with Emily's scandal hanging over us all, I couldn't ignore the possibility that they might come to me, needing support. The thought weighed heavily on me as I continued to work, burying myself in my bakery. I had built something from the ground up, and now it was thriving. My cakes were more popular than ever, and I was finally starting to see the fruits of my hard work. I was proud of what I had created, proud of who I had become. But even amidst my success, the silence from my parents loomed over me like a shadow. Then, one day, after a long day at the shop, I saw a familiar number on my phone screen. It was my mom. I hesitated, unsure whether I wanted to pick up, but a part of me couldn't ignore it. "Sophie, it's Mom." Her voice quivered on the other end. "We need to talk. It's about Emily." For a moment, I thought about hanging up. I didn't want to hear their pleas after everything they had put me through, but curiosity got the best of me, and I stayed on the line. "She's been arrested, Sophie. She's facing years in prison for what she's done," my mom continued, her voice breaking. "We don't know what to do. We've lost everything. Your father, he's so upset, and we're struggling. We need you." The anger swelled inside me. They had never cared about my dreams or supported me when I needed them, and now they were calling for help. I fought to keep my emotions in check, but a part of me, the part that had always craved their approval, wanted to offer some kind of comfort. But that part was smaller now, and I knew what I had to do. "No, Mom," I said, my voice cold but steady. "I'm not helping you. You made your choice when you kicked me out. You disowned me for pursuing my passion. Now you want my help? No, I'm done with you." I could hear her sobbing, but I felt no sympathy. For years, I had tried to gain their approval, to earn their love, but they had rejected me time and again. This was my moment of closure. I wasn't going to let them drag me back into their chaos. "I've built something real, Mom," I continued, my words strong. "I have my own life now. You and Dad made your choices, and I'm making mine. Goodbye." I ended the call before she could respond. A strange sense of relief washed over me. It wasn't the closure I had expected, but it was exactly what I needed. I had finally taken control of my life, and I wasn't going to let them take that away from me. The following days were quiet. My bakery continued to thrive, and I grew more confident in my decisions, but I found myself reflecting on everything. My parents had rejected me, dismissed my dreams, and shown me time and again that I didn't matter. But in doing so, they had taught me something. I didn't need their approval to be successful. I had built this life on my own, and it was mine to live. One afternoon, as I was icing a wedding cake, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but I answered anyway. "Sophie, it's Emily," came the voice on the other end. My heart skipped a beat. Emily, after everything that had happened, I never expected to hear from her again. "Emily," I said, uncertain of how to react. How are you?" She let out a deep sigh. "I know this is out of nowhere, but I need to apologize, for everything, for the way Mom and Dad treated you, and for the things I did," she said, her voice trembling. "I spent so long trying to meet their expectations, but it was never what I wanted. I finally realized that, seeing you follow your dreams gave me the courage to change." I was silent for a moment, trying to process her words. After all the years of silence, of distance between us, now she was apologizing for things I never thought I would hear. "I enrolled in interior design courses, Sophie," she continued, her voice full of emotion. "I realized I was chasing a life that wasn't mine. Now I'm following my passion, just like you." A lump formed in my throat. Emily, the perfect daughter, was now finding her own way. "I'm proud of you, Emily," I said softly. "I really am." We spent hours talking that day, sharing our struggles, our fears, and our hopes. It felt like we were finally seeing each other for who we really were. I realized that despite everything, I had missed her. The sister I had once looked up to was now carving her own path, just as I had, and it felt good to connect with her, to talk openly. Over the following weeks, Emily and I began to rebuild our relationship. We met for coffee, visited each other's homes, and shared our experiences. I was genuinely happy for her. She had found her own path, just as I had found mine. My parents, however, stayed silent. It was clear that they had chosen their path without us, but that no longer mattered. I had found my happiness and success. I didn't need their approval. I had built my life with Aunt Lily's support and, now, with Emily's understanding, I felt complete. Then, one day, my parents reached out. After years of silence, they wanted to meet. I hesitated, but deep down I knew I had to face them. We met at a cafe. They looked older, tired. My father spoke first. "Sophie, we were wrong. We pushed you away when we should have supported you. We're sorry." I felt anger bubbling up inside, but I had changed. I had learned to let go of the past. "I forgive you," I said, my voice calm but firm, "but it's too late. You made your choices, and I made mine." With that, I walked away, finally feeling the closure I never thought I'd have. Their apology didn't change anything. I had already found my family in those who truly cared for me, Aunt Lily, Emily, and my friends. I had learned that the people who reject you don't define you. Only you can write your own story. And for the first time in my life, I was truly free.